Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Birdscast. We thought we'd try something different by answering some questions off Twitter and YouTube, as well as just talking about some mundane stuff. I'm Peter.
And I'm Nakwe.
And how's your December been going, brother?
I'm your brother. So yes, my Christmas break just started, which is very lucky for me because it gives me time to play Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, and I've been enjoying that. I've only gotten through like the first few quests, the main scenario quests, and it's looking really good so far, but sort of the high point for me so far is the new Sage class, which I've been enjoying immensely, and I'm trying to get it up to level 80 so I can main it through the rest of Endwalker. But how about you? How has your December been going?
Well, I've been on holiday all week from my work, so I've been staying up late playing video games. I've been playing Hitman 3 and trying to jump into Final Fantasy XIV, but been hitting some unfortunate queues, and so sort of gave that up until the situation gets a bit better. Yeah. All in all, not bad.
Yeah, just try to play early in the morning or very late in the evening, although I know you're not really a morning person, so that might be difficult.
Yeah, I still have like 3 or 4 quests left of the last Shadowbringers patch. I know they're going to be really cutscene heavy too, so I'm not really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's called Death Until Dawn, the last quest, and it takes quite a bit of time to get through that one, so I recommend doing that as soon as you can.
Well, anyways, we had some questions from Twitter, and I believe you have them somewhere ready.
Yes,
some very kind people actually shown interest in our work and actually asked us some questions, which is very surprising.
Yeah, like one of the things that surprised me, at least, when we started doing this YouTube thing is because I thought we were just going to be creating some content and pushing it out into the world. But then, of course, what ends up happening is that a community starts to develop around that content. And you start to have these very interesting and engaging interactions with the community. And maybe a part of the reason we're doing this Q&A is in the hopes of getting to know you guys a little bit better and giving you the chance to get to know us.
The other part might be having to do with that it's Christmas holidays and we didn't have any better ideas, but we're going to make this one work, right?
Yeah, at least not any ideas that we could develop with a relatively limited time schedule thing.
As some of you might know, we release a video every week, and although it's been interesting to sort of keep to that schedule, sometimes when you want to make sort of grander, better stuff, that 1 week time frame is a bit limiting. So we had plenty of ideas, you're right, but nothing we could sort of confidently execute in a couple of days. So here we are.
And another interesting bit of information is that this is the first time in our lives that we are speaking English to one another without there being sort of like a third person that can only understand English or something like that. So it's an interesting experiment.
Yeah, I'm sitting on the floor looking straight ahead. Don't want to make eye contact, and I had one beer just to loosen up, and we're trying to get through this the best we can.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the opposite wall and having a great time. But yeah, some of the questions. I've taken all of the questions that we got, and I've tried to sort of line them up in a matter that they create a sort of narrative ranging from introductory questions to just fun, goofy questions, and then questions about the future.
Yeah, I haven't really taken a look at these. I wanted to sort of stay fresh, but you've very kindly sorted them into categories and given them some thought. So can't wait to hear them.
But I'm also going to be answering these questions sort of off the top of my head. And I'm thinking we'll just answer these as a sort of a panel would. So we will ask the questions and then we will answer them. And some of your questions are like multifaceted or like multi-layered. So we probably won't cover everything, but we'll try our best.
This is very formal and fun.
Yeah. So the first question that I wanted to cover comes from Vincent, Or Chaos.
Is that? I was going to say, is that Chaos Vincent?
Yeah, Chaos Vincent from Twitter was also left us some great comments over on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, maybe a little bit behind the birds, what do you do besides your videos? Top 3 Final Fantasy games if you want to rank. What do you hope for Final Fantasy XIV?
Wait. One thing at a time, please.
Okay, so maybe a little bit behind the birds. What do you do besides your videos? So if you would maybe introduce yourself first.
I currently make video games in a small Icelandic studio. Before that, I was working in the film industry, doing visual effects for films like Star Wars, for example, and also worked a bit on Han Solo, which is fun, as well as TV and advertising before sort of turning completely, doing a 180 and focusing on video games, which I currently do for a living. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Peter. Over to you, Nökkvi. That's me. So what do I do besides making videos? So I'm currently employed as a high school teacher full-time, where I mainly teach Icelandic, but I also teach Japanese and life skills. And I also sometimes teach a bit at the university, where I am currently a PhD student enrolled in cultural studies, but that doesn't really matter because what I am researching is game studies, and game studies is what I have been focusing on all the way through my BA and MA and now my PhD. And if you don't know, game studies is the academic discipline that is concerned with researching and analyzing video games. And within that academic discipline, I am focusing on Japanese role-playing games. And within that context, I have a particular interest in Final Fantasy games, which is very fortuitous for the channel, I think. But that's me.
Cool.
And we also have some families that we try to take care of.
We do have families, yes. And personal lives. And if you didn't get that from that, we both live in Iceland, our native country.
Native country of Iceland.
Yes, some people think we're American. Or it's just some weird foreign stuff because people keep complaining about my accent. Which is fine. I don't take it personally. So I lived in London for years, which is why I have this fake British accent going on. And it's morphing into this weird sounding American alien fake British thing slowly. But whenever we do the complete story videos, which some of you might have seen, I try to really ham it up and go full English.
Yeah, like I tend to sound maybe a little, I lean a little bit into the British pronunciation when I'm reading, but I don't know what's happening when I'm just speaking freely. It's just something. And oftentimes I just try to mirror the person I'm speaking to. So
yes.
Maybe I'm trying to mirror my brother here.
I think that it's a very normal human thing to do. If you're interested, our actual accents, if we just let it run free, sound something like this. Hello, brother.
It's very difficult to try to do it like this, but let's try it, yes?
Yes. Well, okay. I came here by bike, and when I leave here, I'm also going to go by bike. It's a mountain bike.
Wow, that's amazing, brother.
Yes, and tonight I will maybe have some chicken, and then play some video games.
That's enough of that, I think. But if you want to hear the Icelandic accent spoken professionally, you can always play Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, because there are quite a bit of characters from that game or that expansion that speak with an Icelandic accent.
That's a good point. I didn't get that at the time. It just sounded a bit weird, but I might have been just too close to the subject. It's like Final Fantasy 12. It's like Fran apparently supposed to have like an Icelandic accent.
Yeah.
But it just sounded weird to my ears, at least.
Yeah, Fran, she was supposed to have an Icelandic accent, but she didn't really.
No.
But the characters from Shadowbringers, they actually do.
Yeah, there's a couple of Icelandic actors even. So there's, what is her name? The guard you meet when you first enter the Crystarium.
Yeah, the Viera. I don't remember, but like she seems to have quite a bit of fans. So
yeah,
like the accent can't be that off-putting.
No, it's just you're not used to hearing it in media, so it just sounds weird if you don't know what it is. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
maybe it is just you. No, like I don't understand the appeal, but I'm also very curious how we sound to other nationalities.
I've been told it sounds Russian. When I was living in London, people thought it was Russian or Finnish.
Yeah, like there are a lot of Icelandic actors that have played Russians in films.
Yeah.
But yeah. So,
next question, please.
Well, there were more aspects to Vincent's question. So, top 3 Final Fantasy games you want to rank. We already have a video on that, so at least even if we try to answer that here, I'm just going to like plug it on the screen now.
I wonder if I'd pick the same ones if I'd answer now off the top of my head. Top 3? I can answer that.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, I'm sort of showing my age, but I am very partial to, in no particular order, it's Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 10, and it's a toss-up between 7 and 8. So it's a very classic answer, I think.
Which is your number 1?
So the one I can always just sort of pick up and play, it's probably 9, but...
Because, like, I remember your answers for the video.
Remember my answers. I'm pretty sure they were pretty similar, though. No?
Yeah, you rank 10 as number 1.
Yeah, so like 10, it's sort of the tail end of the golden era of this sort of Squaresoft Final Fantasy games, and it's sort of a nice culmination of all the things that came before. So if I had to choose, gun to my head, it's probably Final Fantasy 10.
And if I had to choose, I think I'm just going to go with the same ranking. 3rd place is Final Fantasy 8. For my 2nd place is Final Fantasy 10. And then for 1st place is Final Fantasy 9.
The video, if I remember correctly, was just a lot of the same games again and again, right? Our top 5 video Final Fantasy games, I mean?
Yeah. Just in different order.
That's what happens when you live in the same household and play the same games, I guess. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, next part of Vincent's question. What do you hope for Final Fantasy 14? Go.
Endwalker, I guess? I don't know. Endwalker, like Final Fantasy 14 in general has exploded since the last year in particular. I've been playing since, I don't know, it's been years and years now, just sort of casually, but sometimes I do take sort of long stints. It seems more popular than ever. Like just yesterday or today, they announced they've stopped selling units of the game just because it's too congested and popular. What do I hope of Final Fantasy 14?
Yeah, what are your hopes?
I hope I like Endwalker, but I'm pretty sure I will. I haven't started playing it yet because I physically can't.
Okay.
But I did play a little bit the day before yesterday, just trying to finish the last Shadowbringers patch, and I just got reminded of how like some of the cutscenes and the text there's just too much of it. And I know some people really like that, and there's details and exposition and lore and stuff like that, but when you're doing it one after another and it's an hour of cutscenes and you barely move, I think they could do it a different way. I don't really have an answer for it, but it's not really. It gets a bit old, and I'm sort of hoping that Endwalker isn't the same.
At least in the sort of parts that I've played so far, there's a surprising amount of voice acting in the game, and the cinematography is also a bit more alive. You get some interesting camera angles and interesting actions going on screen. But yeah, like you said, Final Fantasy XIV has been greatly successful and has become incredibly successful as of late. But if I were to sort of think about what kind of success I would like to see in the future, is that Final Fantasy XIV would, unlike Final Fantasy XI, become a sort of a more integral part of the Final Fantasy canon as a whole. And what I mean by canon is what games can Final Fantasy fans have been expected to play to have a conversation about them, like the Final Fantasy fandom. Because as things stand, the general Final Fantasy fandom and the Final Fantasy XIV fandom are sort of divided, which makes it kind of awkward to create Final Fantasy XIV content in a way, because you might be pissing some people off or alienating them or And also when you make content that isn't Final Fantasy 14, you might be alienating the Final Fantasy 14 players. So that's something that is an issue for us as content creators.
I got an idea. I know what I want more of at 14. Stuff like when you went to Rabanastre, or not Rabanastre, what is it called? Evilis. I want to go to Midgar or something. I want to go to, Final Fantasy 9 locations. They could. It doesn't even have to fit into the story. It can just be there. It can be Final Fantasy 14 can be this sort of hub thing where you can just revisit stuff and I don't know. Why can't I go to Spira or something?
Yeah, and like Sakaguchi, Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, he had an interesting point of view the other day when he was comparing Final Fantasy 14 to like a theme park, because like Super Mario Land just opened in Osaka at Universal Studios Japan, and he was thinking like, oh, why doesn't Final Fantasy have like a theme park? And then he like stopped thinking about that when he started to play Final Fantasy 14, because he realized that Final Fantasy already had a theme park. So it would be nice to see some other sort of nods to classic Final Fantasy games.
I mean, they've sort of done it. Like you can pick up some clothes. You can dress like Cloud Strife or Lightning from Final Fantasy 13, but they really sort of did it properly with the Final Fantasy Tactics stuff, where they sort of concluded the War of the Lion Sire or something, where you sort of get closure for a bunch of stuff that happened in the game, for 20 years ago, and you get to visit. There's a nice raid, and I know it's in Ivalis, but I don't know what the city's called. But they could easily do stuff like that. So more, please.
Wait, wasn't it Rabanastre? Is it some other city?
Was it Rabanastre?
There's at least one, wasn't it?
Anyways, you get my point. We went to another game location, and we got to run around and fight some monsters, and I really liked that, and I want more, please. Moving on.
So yeah, okay. So the next part of the question: when did you play your first Final Fantasy game, and which one was it?
I think it's probably the same for the both of us. Or not, no. I remember we went to a video game store, which they don't have anymore. And we picked up a copy of Final Fantasy VII in a sort of big white box for the PC. I didn't play any of the NES titles until much later.
They didn't come to Europe.
No, which makes sense, which is why I didn't play them. But yeah, I think it was Final Fantasy VII on the PC.
Yeah, so I played Final Fantasy VII a bit earlier on PlayStation, but just the Midgar portion. I played it at a friend's house, and we couldn't really understand it because it was all in English. But it had a big enough impact on me that when I got the chance, I was able to get our dad to buy Final Fantasy VII for PC. At that time, we played through all of it.
Yeah, I remember my friend having it on PlayStation, and there was a big difference when you were a kid, at least, in that the PC version wasn't censored. So Barrett said shit and all sorts of bad words, while on the PlayStation it was all sort of cartoon symbols.
Yeah, so I was around 10 or 11, which means that you were 7 or 8.
Yeah, so Final Fantasy VII came to Iceland probably 98.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was just when we got our first sort of proper PC, so Windows 95.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, we had an Amiga, which is like I think it's a Russian or something. And you had every game came on a floppy disk, and it was pretty cool at the time, but not anymore, I guess.
Yeah, and the last part of the question: how long do you work on your videos approximately? Anything you want to say about that, or about the process in general?
It differs greatly, I would say. So lately we've been working hard on pumping out some Final Fantasy XIV story content, which entails Nökwi here writing a really long script and me narrating the whole thing in a little cubicle. It's a storage room with some foam. And let's say the recording takes 2 hours, then it takes about 4 hours to edit the whole thing, and then we have to capture all the footage, which takes hours and hours, and then we have to edit the whole thing. And some videos are a lot harder to do than others. Would you agree?
Yes. For example, I'm almost finished with the Heavensward complete story script, and it has taken me approximately 12 hours to write it. And I still have maybe 2 hours left.
And I'd like to remind people that there's a video coming out every Saturday for the last year and a half. So 12 hours here, 12 hours there may not sound like a lot, but when it's done in a sort of cadence of 1 week at a time, it certainly feels like a lot, and it is a lot.
Yeah, especially if you have a full-time job and a family.
Which we both do.
At the same time. But yeah, so how long do we work on our videos? Yeah, so most videos we finish within the span of a week. Sometimes I can write it and narrate it and edit it in 1 week, and sometimes we're
literally editing an hour before it comes out and exporting it and all that stuff, especially when it's sort of a long, complicated video. There are videos that have featured a lot of custom 3D content, which I've made, which no one notices, but that does add a considerable amount of production time and headaches. But, we do on the whole enjoy it. We just wish we could know what to do better.
Well, it would be nice to just have more time to work on it. And maybe we will if we ever get some real money for it.
Yes, so we are affiliates now, but the money hasn't even reached the threshold where we can cash out. So it's not about the money, of course, but the more money we would make, the more time we could, spare for this stuff.
I like money. Yeah,
agreed.
Okay, so the next question is from Andrew. And Spacey from Twitter, who was one of our earlier supporters. So we are very, very thankful for people like him and all of you who are listening to this.
All 20 of you?
Yes.
It's funny because it's true.
Yeah, so the question from Andrew is, who are your top 5 Final Fantasy characters? I also would like to know the story behind the birds. Where does the inspiration come from behind the amazing thumbnail art? And finally, how high-pello are you for Final Fantasy 16?
Yeah, is that the high-pello thing?
Yeah,
just right quick before we get into the questions. We have a series called Get High-pelloed, which is sort of, we know it's not for everyone. It's just sort of we just sort of do it. So I rigged and made a next generation high-pello for this stuff, and I've made some full CG cutscenes and stained glass art, 3D art of high-pellos. It's pretty much where we say how high-pellowed or hyped we are for a video game that's coming out. And no one watches it, but we are going to keep doing it forever because it's ridiculous.
So, yeah, we have to make one for Stranger of Paradise next year. So, who are your top 5 Final Fantasy characters?
Why don't you start? Let's see if we just have the same ones. Is it going to be 14 stuff?
Oh, do you have a list in your mind?
It's just going to be fucking boring, but yeah, I do.
Okay. Go.
All right. I like Auron. And I also like Sephiroth. Because I'm 7. Actually, good point. Yeah. No, you go now. Wait, I have to think.
So, if we just go with characters that we think of off the top of our head, one character that is calling to me at the moment is Steiner from Final Fantasy IX.
Right. I don't want to sort of backtrack, but the reason I said I like Weavy is because he really does show personal growth and he has a nice character arc. I don't want to spoil 9 for anyone, but
he pees in the game.
He does pee in the game. Yes. And it raises a lot of existential questions about, what is a soul and who are we and is there a purpose to any of this? Anyways, have you thought of anyone else?
I'm also just thinking about what does it mean to have a favorite character.
I know, like Sephiroth, like I said it because it's just like you kind of have to, but he's like, now I'm 30 now, and he's just like such an edgelord. Like I would have said Cloud too, but I don't like Cloud. He's just sort of there. He's like I don't relate to him anymore because I'm not a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, I like Cloud and Tidus and Sephiroth and all those guys, but not in the way I think the question is sort of asking for.
And it also begs the question, like, why do we favor certain characters over others? Like, is it because we relate to them? Is it because we see something in them that we would aspire to become one day? Or is it because they play such a meaningful part in the story, a story that we love? So there are a lot of different things to consider, really. But
I was thinking, just like when you said that, I kind of just like, I was thinking about Final Fantasy 9 in general. I was like, I like King Sid. Because he's just a smart dude and it's like down on his luck and like I can relate, I guess. Like I'm not saying I'm a smart dude, but it's just like he's like an adult and he's got problems and he tries to find solutions, you know. So I'm really trying to relate on these characters to on like a personal level. Which I don't know if the question is asking for that, but like, yeah.
Well, we just allow the questions to take us wherever we can go with them. And I think like if there was a live action remake of Final Fantasy 9, you definitely could play Sid.
Thank you. Is that like an Ooglop diss or is it human Sid?
I was thinking human Sid, but
speaking of Sids, like. I'd probably like, I can relate more to Sid from Final Fantasy VII than in Cloud. Sid just like, he's a guy who likes machines. He's a rough dude, doesn't take any shit. I'm not saying I'm that, but maybe I aspire to be. And Cloud is just like, all the time. So yeah, this question agitated me more than I thought it would.
Oh yeah, Peter and Sid Highwind from Final Fantasy VII. They definitely have like a grumpy side, but also a heart of gold.
Yeah, quick anger, but like when you need him, he's there.
Like, shut up, wife.
No.
Maybe it's a goddamn tea.
That's not what I meant at all. So if you...
more characters.
Well, what was the question? How many top characters?
Top 5.
5? Jesus Christ. Okay. King Sid. Sid from 10. Sid from 14. Just like... They're there to support the team. They don't need everything to be about them. They don't have crazy hair. Is that a really... So yeah, it's a different answer. I like Auron. He's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Auron is cool. Yeah,
he is cool.
That's a hot take from Peter.
He's like selfishly selfless. I don't know. Like... I'm sure you can talk about that for fucking half an hour. I'm sure you can talk about that for a long time. We did do some character analysis on our channel, Auron included. So maybe just look at that. And you can know why I like Auron.
You plug the video here.
Yes.
Okay.
Video.
So did you say your top 5?
I don't really have any top 5. Jesus. Yeah. Probably Auron. I don't know. He's like... Such a boring answer, though. But I also like Sid from 7 because he's got a spear and he just like says "fuck you" and then runs away. I don't know. No, he doesn't.
I like Tifa. She's hot.
Tifa's got boobies.
But yeah, like that's part of the appeal, at least. So like Tifa would probably make it into my top 5 favorite character list.
Because of the boobies? What?
Not
exclusively because of the boobies.
Not exclusively. Like she is a very nice character. And like she was a sort of childhood crush.
It's just like the women of Final Fantasy VII, like everything revolves around Cloud, and I really don't like that aspect. Like, oh, poor Cloud, Cloud, be careful. And I just think they could be a bit more fleshed out, to be honest. But that's just, I sort of felt it when I played the old game, but especially when I played the new remake. Just like everything, everyone's cuddling. I know he's the main character, but everyone's like cuddling Cloud, and he's got a tough life, and Just, hey, maybe you do your girl, and Cloud just, he's there, and, maybe things work out and maybe they don't.
Yeah. Final Fantasy VII Remake, as things stand, plays a little bit like Cloud's personal harem with Jessie and Tifa and Aerith. But yeah, I still like Tifa. She's a nice person.
It doesn't have to make sense. That's fine.
She's a nice person.
Can't just be boobies
who
and
looks good.
Crush. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So more characters.
I mean, can we just move on, please? I don't think we've said anything that can be said.
Yeah, we'll just make a video later.
Mm-hmm.
I also would like to know the story behind the birds. We've already covered that a little bit, right? Do you want to add anything to the story about the birds?
Does it mean how we came up with the birds?
Yes.
Right? We have covered that like in other places, I guess. But originally we were going to call ourselves the Choco Bros, but we sort of decided that might be too sort of pigeonholey, so we can just do Final Fantasy stuff because we don't want to be. Currently, we're a Final Fantasy channel and we're committed to that, but we don't want to close all the exits and box ourselves into exclusively Final Fantasy content. Maybe we want to talk about other stuff. So we thought the Birds of Play might be. It's a nice pun. There's a duo aspect to the name, so there's two of us. And we can also do other stuff under the Birds of Play name, like stream random stuff like Death Stranding or something.
Yeah, and two other things about the Birds of Play. One thing is that a part of the pun is sort of teasing Japanese people, because it's a pun that's very difficult for them to pronounce if they don't have proper...
This is news to me.
If they don't have proper training in English, so they would... It's difficult for them to say play, so they say prey. So it becomes prey again, Birds of Prey, which the pun is building on.
So we're like ungoogleable in Japan.
And then the second thing is that in the mythology of our country, we have Odin or Odin and Thor and stuff like that. And Odin, he has two birds, Hugin and Munin, who are these two ravens that are also the inspiration for our birds. That's why we aren't canaries or peacocks or something like that.
Yep, now that you mention it, that makes sense. Yep. I had forgotten all those discussions.
Yeah. Where does the inspiration come from behind the amazing thumbnail art?
So Nukwe's wife, we'll just call her Artbird for now, so we don't want to dox anyone, but she draws all our fantastic thumbnail art. And usually the way we do it, either me or Nukwe create some sort of base crappy template, which sort of holds all the inspiration and a general idea, or we just ask, hey, we want a bird with an explorer hat and a beard, please, and a Titus that's drooling, please. And then she just sort of cooks it up, and I do some final tweaks, and there we go.
Yeah. But speaking of inspiration, like I give her chocolate, so most of the inspiration is probably coming from the chocolate.
Yeah, she's like huge now, just from all the chocolate, just to feed the channel.
Oh, that's comedy.
That's comedy.
And finally, how high-pillow are you for Final Fantasy 16?
I just want to mention one thing about the thumbnails. Like, so we've been really ambitious with the thumbnails ever since we started, and it's all been hand-drawn, like 99% of it. And I think now looking back, it might have been like an hindrance to us, but we won't stop doing it. But I wonder sometimes if we would have used screenshots and more instantly recognizable images from games and just put less thought into the thumbnails, that we might have been bigger by now. Your thoughts?
Maybe, but like we also have people who really like the thumbnails, so maybe you're just trying to build a viewer base of those people.
Art connoisseurs.
But yeah, so hopefully people will start to, and we also like eventually we want people to connect the thumbnails to an idea of quality.
Sure,
and like videos that they might like to look at. So we have to make great videos, and my wife needs to eat more chocolate, and my wife needs to eat more chocolate and
comedy
and draw more thumbnails. But yeah, how high-pillow are you for Final Fantasy 16?
So it's been a while since we got any more information about 16. I am pretty high-pallowed. Like, I am a jaded 30-year-old man, and it's hard to get excited about anything these days, which is, another discussion for another time. But, yeah, I like the whole sort of medieval stuff. Fan of that. The combat we saw was perhaps, a bit more action-oriented than I would have liked. But then again, I really did like the Final Fantasy VII Remake battle system. I thought they kind of nailed the whole active / what's it called? Time freeze thing.
Slow motion?
Yeah.
Are you trying to say slow motion, brother?
Slow motion, that's the one. You can I can pause and give myself a potion, but then I can keep hitting people. I like that. So I'm guessing 16 is going to be like an improvement on that, I hope.
Well, they have the battle director from Devil May Cry something. I haven't really played Devil May Cry.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I've played a lot of Devil May Cry, like the old games, 1, 2, 3. And that's not really what I associate with Final Fantasy, but I'm sure they'll do it justice.
Yeah, we'll see. So how high-pallowed am I? Nökvi.
What was the scale again? You give it... what was the scale of high-pallows?
You can have like up to 5 high-pallows, and you can have half a shoe puff.
I think, didn't we do like a 16? No, I didn't. I gave it 4 high-pallows and half a shoe puff. Roll the clip. Remember? Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, how high-pallowed am I? So, I'm less high-pallowed than I thought I would be during this time of year, because we were expecting a new trailer.
That's true.
That we didn't get. But anytime I really dive into the content that we've already seen, like the trailer and the website, that gets me really excited.
Gets you really high-pallowed.
It gets me really high-pallowed.
Use the brand.
Yeah. And so I'm really looking forward to an update on Final Fantasy 16. So I'm going to say my high-pallow stage at the moment is just 2 high-pallows and half a shoe puff.
What the hell? Yeah.
Of course I'm going to get high-pallowed again when we see some more content.
We're going to revisit the high-pallow score, of course. We might even make a full video. We probably will.
But like, they did promise on the website that they were going to show that the next big reveal would be in 2021.
Yeah.
And 2021 is almost over. And I feel like it's sort of uncharacteristic of Yoshi P to not be a man of his word.
I mean, to be fair, he and they have been pretty busy with the biggest online game in the world currently, Final Fantasy XIV, which I'm guessing is making them a shit ton of money. And maybe some of the things just fall by the wayside.
Yeah, sure, but just like issue some sort of announcement like they usually do, like he did announce that they weren't going to show Final Fantasy 16 at some events. So
if I was in Yoshi P's shoes, I'd probably have a heart attack. I'm trying to be very fair to the man and not burn everyone out, because I don't want to be demanding. And I agree that it would have been nice to have some communication. But then again, I'm cutting people in the games industry, just in general, some slack these days, because there's a lot of stuff been happening. Blizzard and so forth. And it all hits very close to home.
And also, 2021 isn't over.
Yeah. This is the time when we put on clown makeup and then say, "About 2021 isn't over," while slowly painting ourselves with clown makeup. That's the meme the kids do.
Yeah. So okay. Next question from Skyrand Venatus.
I know that name.
Yeah, he has checked me out on Twitch. And if you haven't checked me out on Twitch, you should definitely check me out on Twitch. Play Twitch. Link down below. Okay, so here's the question. Oh God, I think I asked all I could when I hung out on your streams, so it's a great place to ask questions.
Nice callback.
But I guess if you were to be granted any one official licensed Final Fantasy merch from all that had ever existed, what merch would it be? I already have my answer. What's your answer?
You can start. My answer is depressing, so you can go.
No, we're going to end with a depressing one. So my answer is, there's this really cool statue thing of Zidane and Kuja fighting during the ending of Final Fantasy IX, which looks really, really cool, and I would like that, please.
All right.
Are you listening, Square Enix?
Are you showing a picture right now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I'm looking wistfully out the window now, thinking, when I was a kid, there's probably been any number of things, but I've been moving between countries a lot and just having to throw a bunch of stuff away and just being sort of generally less materialistic when it comes to stuff like figures and just like loot, like anime loot crates. I would have loved those when I was a kid, but now I just don't want any more clutter in my home. The one thing that did come to mind was the something small. So the first soldier affiliate pack, which some people got, which we didn't. We tried, but we were not accepted. There was like a little Shinra employee sort of name badge thing. That would be cool to keep in my wallet, and I can just bring that with me whenever.
Yeah.
So that's a boring answer.
No. I also would have liked that. I also just the honor of being noticed. You should just make it.
We can just make that, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So, next question comes from our good friend MJ Gallagher.
Hey,
from Final Fantasy VII books or at Final Fantasy VII novels.
Girls.
Who has published a book called
Norse Mythology
and
Final Fantasy
Norse Mythology, the Norse myths that inspired Final Fantasy VII.
Put it up on screen.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Like, I read it and I recommend it, and I think it's a really interesting read, and I think it does combine Final Fantasy with something else that people might be interested to learn about, and I think that's one of the great appeals of games, or at least that's how I want to engage with games. For example, Final Fantasy has inspired me to want to learn to play the piano or the keyboards, and that's something that I've been working on during the last semester. Finally, it's never too late, or at least
right now.
But yeah, so I think it's great when like the games that we love extend into some other avenue that we are able to explore. So yeah, check out the book, Christmas. But yeah, the question: what is your favorite bird-related moment in any Final Fantasy game?
Ooh, good question. I guess you've thought about this.
I didn't have to think about it. I know I have a favorite bird moment.
No.
I should go.
No. One thing did come to mind. I'll go first.
Okay.
I think it's when you arrive in like Chocobo heaven as Choco, and he's so happy. You've sort of earned it, and it took a lot to get there. Yeah, that's the one thing that popped into mind. And not the Final Fantasy X balloon chase, at least. Hey.
Yeah. Okay. So Final Fantasy IX, and I agree. Like, I think that the sort of version of Chocobos that I love the most is from Final Fantasy IX. But Chocobos aren't the only birds from the Final Fantasy series, and my favorite bird moment actually comes from Final Fantasy VII, when you are going to the Gold Saucer, or you're on your way to North Corel, and you get the option to sort of climb up to the upper right part of the screen, where you find a nest of birds who are sort of nesting with a bit of treasure around them, and you get the choice to either leave the treasure or take it. And if I remember correctly, like if you take it, you actually have to fight some birds, and that fight might be a little bit of a deterrent. But like, I always remember it as something that you don't really suffer any bad things from doing. There are no bad implications. So like, it's just, do you want to disturb the nest or not? Like, and there's financial gain to be had from disturbing it. And like, as a little child, or child of 11, that really stuck with me. And like, every time I play that scene, I leave it. Like, even though you tell yourself, oh, the next time is going to be different, I'm going to play as the bad guy. And then your moral compass kicks in and you just do everything the same way again. Or at least that's how I tend to play RPGs.
I like Chocobo Heaven. What's it actually called again? Like Chocobo Sky City?
Chocobo's Paradise?
Chocobo Paradise, yeah. I call it Chocobo Heaven. Because they're all dead in my head. It's a fan theory.
Headcanon. Okay.
Moving on.
Okay, so the next question comes from Good Things to Life at GT2L Gaming on Twitter. And listen well. Here's the question. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
A what?
An unladen swallow. A swallow that is unburdened by anything.
By like guilt or...
yeah, guilt-free swallow.
What's the terminal velocity of an unladen swallow? Is that like a sexual joke?
Or like, if you don't have the answer, I actually have the answer.
I don't have the answer, no. So let me guess though.
Okay.
Is it 60 kilometers an hour?
I would have to do some math in order to know that, but it's estimated that the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow is 11 meters per second or 24 miles per hour.
24 miles, that's like 50 kilometers an hour, so I was a bit over.
Yeah.
All right.
Your bird trivia knowledge is not...
Next, please.
So, next question is from YouTube, from Colpugno7, and it's which Final Fantasy is your personal favorite and why?
And we've sort of covered this, but...
I just wanted to acknowledge the question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Final Fantasy 9.
Final Fantasy 9. Or like Pietro said in another video, Final Fantasy 10.
Did I say 10 earlier in this video?
You said 9.
All right. So I like 9 and 10.
Yeah, today Pietro likes 9. But yeah, so next question comes from Udrix at Boy of Stone from Twitter. His profile picture looks a little bit like Markiplier, so I thought we would get some real
Markiplier
famous people tuning in.
Yeah, Markiplier is commenting and asking us the question. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so the question is, if you both had unlimited funds and guarantee of successful execution, which character would you cosplay as?
Whoa, interesting. Haven't done much cosplay.
Have you done any cosplay?
I had like a Naruto glove.
Ooh.
And a headband. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
You go.
So, when I have thought of cosplaying, the character that has come to mind is Auron, because as we established, Auron is cool. But like, there's another part of this question. Like, if you had unlimited funds and a guarantee of successful execution, it feels like a bit of a shame to waste that on Auron.
Yeah, I was going to say Auron too, because I like sort of flowy open clothes.
You could be Waka.
Cool. But I know what it is now. I'd buy like a $10,000 fursuit and be Kimari. And just be like the best, most realistic Kimari you could ever be and just go boo around town.
Yeah. And so if I had unlimited funds and a guarantee of successful execution, I'd be...
What about like angelic Sephiroth, like a final boss, like 1 kilometer across, just like this heavenly being?
Oh, I really want that now. I was going to say Ruby Weapon, but I think like...
What about like the final Pope form of Final Fantasy 13, where he's just like a big metal robot train man?
Or then like if we would go to like a convention and we were like...
You could just be like a wall.
We were like the one-winged angel. You're like...
Or like, what's his name? Was it Baudry? No, like from 14, the big fat guy turns into like a beautiful guy.
Oh yeah, and like the cosplay could like...
Yeah,
that's a spoiler though, so let's... But yeah, it's a great...
I just beeped it all out, it's fine.
Beep! Okay. So yeah, something... And we could also do like one of the wall bosses. Just be like a wall.
Just be like a wall. Yeah,
demon wall.
Or like Ruby Weapon or something. Like really tall, like a big mecha Evangelion.
But yeah, okay. So next question from Jamie Scott, One Chord JS at Twitter. Which characters do you think resemble birds in real life?
What does that mean? What? They like food, and they also fly.
I have an answer.
Crows are pretty smart. Quina kind of feels like a bird.
Yeah, okay, that's actually a very interesting answer.
Like, she follows instinct. Eats just about everything.
I like that you say she as well, because I always think of Quina as a he.
It's sort of it, really, right?
Well,
they're asexual.
It's like what's the English word again? Androgynous and non-androgynous.
Androgynous.
Androgynous.
Is that asexual?
It's something. We are not going into
gender and sex are not the same thing, brother.
Yeah, but like Quina is interesting, and maybe bird, like in the sense that Quina stands a bit outside the world of sort of common understanding. Like Quina has his own view on the world, which is largely filtered through food. And even though he has such a different worldview, he's able to communicate with the other members of the party, which is quite interesting if you were to consider that the German philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein...
What's your answer, brother? What character's like a bird?
No, I don't get to talk about Wittgenstein.
No.
Because like Wittgenstein, he said that even if a lion could speak, we would not be able to understand it. Which is very interesting because like lions, you would maybe often consider speech as the prerequisite for understanding. But he's saying that people are so different from lions that we would not be able to understand it. And Quina is very different from other species. But yeah, okay, I see that I looked over at your face.
She also likes frogs. Storks also like frogs. So she is like bird. Good answer.
Yes,
You
okay.
go.
I go. So the character that most resembles a bird in Final Fantasy is Kenny Crow from Final Fantasy 15.
Hey, good one. Moving on.
Yeah. So the next question is from YouTube, from Strange Vision, who has the Balam Garden logo as his or hers profile picture.
Go on.
And the question is, do you enjoy any of the various fan theories about Final Fantasy games? And do you ever find yourself coming up with your own theories?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you enjoy any of the various fan theories about Final Fantasy games, and do you ever find yourself coming up with your own theories? I don't tend to like the popular ones like Squall is Dead or Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy X sharing a world, but I still find it fun to come up with explanations for things in Final Fantasy games sometimes. I know you recently did a light-hearted take on Final Fantasy X as a nature documentary.
Sure, the video.
So that's one example. I don't know how the nature documentary is a fan theory, but like it gives us a different perspective.
It also gives us an opportunity to plug it, so go watch it. I did a very nice David Attenborough impression. Well, I say very nice. I did a David Attenborough impression for 6 minutes, so please go watch it. Please go watch it. The question, do I like fan theories usually? No, I don't. I usually think they're really boring, and stuff like Squall is Dead is so mind-numbingly boring and has no bearing on anything in the game that it doesn't even register on my goddamn radar. You, brother? Stuff like Spira and the world of Final Fantasy X is a bit different because if I remember correctly, there's been some official sort of musings on this at least.
It's something that they like to play around with. Like in the Final Fantasy VII remake, they had a picture of Shinra and stuff like that. But yeah, it's more for fun than something that is
but like
established.
Stuff like they were dead all along is just so boring and been played out so much.
I think that theory isn't the most interesting one. But I do think, because like you mentioned officiality and like which indicates that the authors or developers have sort of creative control over not only the game, but also interpretation, which I don't think is the case, actually. You can interpret the text independent of authorial intent, and authorial intent is often very difficult to discern, if not impossible, which led us to the death of the author being conceptualized by Roland Barthes. And but yeah, so
I'm just looking out the window right now.
He's looking out the window.
Zoning out.
As you can see, we are not...
I'm a pragmatic realpolitik man, which means that if it has no bearing on anything in the game, I don't really care. And which is a really boring answer, but some people like to play games like that.
Yeah, like it's very common for people in the sort of video game world to take the words of the developers as the sort of last word. But like texts, they exist independently of their authors. And if you can make a compelling argument about something in the game or in a book or in a movie that the author didn't think of beforehand or hadn't properly conceptualized, then that's perfectly valid.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's just the stuff I've usually seen is so vapid and sort of edgy teen stuff and creepypasta-esque. Maybe I just haven't been looking at the right sources for the stuff, but nothing has ever really grabbed me in that way. But I haven't been reading in-depth analyses of the game.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, but like we did develop one fan theory for Final Fantasy X when we made the video, "Why did Braska touch the sphere?" Because
a much beloved classic video.
A much beloved classic.
Why did Oaka touch the sphere?
Yeah.
Please go watch.
But like the thing with those things is that Oaka and Braska, they both touch the save spheres, which means that the save points are actual physical, or at least it indicates that the save spheres are actual physical objects in the world of Spira. Which begs the question, like, why are they touching them? They're not saving the game. Are they healing themselves or something like that? And our fan theory...
But that's sort of my point. Like, that's stuff that actually happens in the game. It has bearing on the world, which is why I care. Stuff like, oh, Cypher's actually a woman. Like, all right, like, nothing in the game indicates that he actually is.
Great example.
I don't care. I just had the top of my head. Yeah. I don't know.
But like another sort of aspect of theory crafting that I'm not really, like, I don't mind it, but I'm not interested in it myself, is like speculating what's going to happen next. Like,
this is no knock on other content creators, but I for one don't watch stuff for 4 hours, but people discussing what's going to happen in the next Final Fantasy installment when they have literally no information, or the same information we have already, and it's usually just wrong, I think, and it's, at least in any case, it's not interesting to me.
Yeah, like we don't know if it's wrong or right, but like a part of it is of course creating hype, which might be a good thing, but it also establishes like an horizon of expectations that is really difficult for the actual product to live up to.
Yeah, agreed. Like the less hype. Like, hype is good, you know, marketing hype is good. You want to sell units of the game and you want people to buy the game. But on a personal level, as if you've been playing video games for 5, 10, 20 years, you know by now not to set the bar too high in your head, because there's nothing but disappointment. At least that's what I've sort of been. I remember the game that broke me, it was Spore. Remember the game Spore? I was like, I don't know, 14, 15. It came out. It was crazily hyped up to be this sort of procedural, amazing evolutionary world, and it was not good, and none of the promises were there. And after that, I vowed to myself never to be invested in a game that hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, Peter was filled with childlike wonder before Spore.
I mean, I kind of was, to be honest. It really did break me.
Yeah, like I didn't play Spore that much, so I retained my sense of childlike wonder.
Right, you've destroyed me.
Yeah, but like, I like to take things seriously. So, for example, when it comes to Final Fantasy games, like, I like to analyze them as much as I can. And like Final Fantasy 14 now I'm really trying to get into the lore, and now that I am trying to get into the lore and the story and everything really, because we're making Final Fantasy 14 content.
Yeah, and I think the reason we work so well together as a team, quote unquote, is that I also do analyze stuff deeply, but in a different way, because I do make games. I'm a technical artist, so I look at things like the visuals and how they're executed and cinematography and all that stuff, because that's where my interests lie. And you, not that you don't like that too, but you are an academic by definition, and that is something you focus on when you look at these games.
Yeah, like also compared to literary studies and film studies, production and development it's a much larger part, and design is a much larger part of game studies as an academic discipline. But what was I saying before about Final Fantasy XIV?
I don't know.
I was saying like, when I take stuff seriously and I try to understand it as much as possible, it becomes much more enjoyable. And I find the same applies to being a teacher, because now as a high school teacher, I'm teaching a lot of the stuff that I used to have to study back in high school. And back in those days, I didn't really take it seriously. But like, when you engage with a work or a text and you take it seriously, you will find stuff that will have the opportunity to improve your life, or to better you as a person, or to deepen your understanding of not only the text itself, but also the medium which it belongs to. So that's something that I recommend, even though I don't really remember why I'm recommending it. But we are very close to the end now.
Yes, moving on, please.
So next question. Will you do Let's Plays for Final Fantasy? The question is from YouTube.
Yeah.
Captain Bear Tato.
All right.
So it's like a bear and a potato, I guess.
Potato.
Who has left us some fun comments as well, and a lot of these other people have as well. So we're not discounting that.
What's the question again?
Yeah. So will you do Let's Plays for Final Fantasy games?
We have done a series. Well, it's unfinished because it was just more of a test and see if people would actually watch it. But we did play Final Fantasy 13 2 Lightning Returns, a full Let's Play setup. We were just talking and playing, and that in and of itself was an interesting experiment, because we don't do that a lot. Some people really liked it and wanted us to do more, but we haven't really decided if we want to do it or not. Luckily, he streams Final Fantasy 14 every week, so that's sort of like a Let's Play. But yeah, we're definitely, I'd say we're open to doing more, yes?
I want to finish Lightning Returns, because there's also this very nice person over on Reddit that watches it with her child or his child. I think it's a she. I don't know.
I think it's
a Quina thing all over again.
It was what my brother's trying to say. There was a person who watched the series with his son or daughter, son, right?
I think it's son.
Well, we can't get this out, and they were waiting for more, and we never did anymore.
Yeah. And another part of the question also, will you branch out to other games in the JRPG genre as well? For theories, discussions, or just overall enjoyment and reviews?
We sort of touched on this before, like saying, like we're called the Birds of Play because we're not called the Chocobo family duo, because maybe we want to actually branch out a bit in the future and at least have the opportunity to do so without being burdened with the Final Fantasy name. Even though, had we used the Final Fantasy name in the beginning, we probably would have been bigger by now.
Yeah, so what I would say is that, as I see it, Final Fantasy is sort of at the center of our sphere of interest. And then outside that immediate sphere, we have JRPGs and then Japanese games, and then just games in general. And that is something that we might explore later.
I mean, there's a Fantasian review already up on the channel from you. That's Final Fantasy related, sure, but it's not a Final Fantasy title. So we've already branched out in a way.
Yeah. But like, as things stand, I at least have plenty of things still to say and to research and to analyze about Final Fantasy. So that's not going away anytime soon. Do you want to say anything else about that question, or do you want to go for closing remarks?
Just on that note about, having stuff. Having more stuff in the bank to do. Like, I really enjoy making custom content for the channel, like the 3D logos or the 3D sequences, or go watch Ifrit, please. So the video I did on Ifrit is a bunch of custom 3D stuff in there. And I would, I really relish the opportunity to make more of that stuff and being able to devote more time to it. So yeah, if we do get bigger, I'd like to do more of that stuff and more live action stuff and yeah, more sort of content creation.
Yeah. So we've been at it for 1.5 years approximately, and we're doing okay.
Nothing explosive yet,
Yeah.
but we got some things in the bank.
We haven't seen a single dollar yet,
No.
even though we have spent quite a bit of money getting equipment
and capture cards and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
But maybe one day in the future. Until then, it's great that you are willing to stick with us and watch our videos. And like, if you're listening to this,
Because if you are listening, then that probably means you already watch our videos. But please do share the channel around. And if you have any friends that like Final Fantasy, there's a chance they might like us. So at least show them our videos and we could grow together.
yeah, and like also if you see our videos anywhere on Reddit or Facebook or Twitter, like it or retweet or comment or anything you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and there's a new news about the algorithm. Apparently, instead of liking and subscribing, all that stuff, if you watch one of our videos and then right after that one, watch another one of our videos, that's apparently the biggest thing you could do to help our channel.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep, it's straight hot off the presses.
Okay.
I think we've gone on long enough. I hope this was fun to someone at least.
It was surprisingly fun to do.
Sure. I've had a beer, as I said, and I'm not looking at you directly, so that certainly helps.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a sort of more comfortable setting to do this, but
Yes.
this worked out quite nicely, I think.
At least I have a pillow. So I'm sitting on the floor, but I have a pillow. But
And the English has become quite natural, yes.
so natural. So okay. I think we should end this with some bird sounds.
Subscribe!
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, then you are subscribed.